All right, welcome back, everyone, to episode 29 of Gamer Chats. You have Lotus here along with Skull, and today, Skull is mostly going to listen to me rant about Dragon Age and that franchise.
I can talk a little bit about one of the games.
Which one have you played?
I played a bit of Inquisition, and I never got to finish it.
Okay, when we get to Inquisition, I would definitely get your thoughts on that because I know a lot of, no, I wouldn't say a lot of people, I guess mixed reviews on the game. I don't know. Hard to say. Before we do get into the games, I do want to talk about the Netflix series that came out. It's a very short 6 episode season. I think it's a season called Dragon Age Absolution. I loved it personally. It kind of gave me a lot of Vox Machina vibes with the characters and the story, which makes sense because Dragon Age is obviously a fantasy setting, which you see some parallels with D&D, but then you also have the unique creatures to the Dragon Age universe. So I would say I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I understood a fair amount of it, obviously from playing all the games and retaining a lot of that information. So if you are a fan,
Yeah.
I would recommend it because it is good. And it also sheds a little bit of light on Tevinter, which I believe Dragon Age 4 is supposed to take place in Tevinter, but I could be wrong. That's all rumor at this point, to my knowledge. Anyway, Dragon Age is an interesting franchise. I hold it almost in the same regard as the Elder Scrolls because it was just a large part of growing up. Not necessarily my childhood, but more like teenage years. Feels about right? Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, teenage years, because I think that's when we still had the rent a video game, like Blockbuster and those kind of stores, basically before they all went out of business. So,
Damn.
yeah, I think that was my first
I vaguely
exposure.
remember those.
See, I remember them a little bit better just because they were a large part of growing up for me. It would always be like every weekend we could go and rent out a movie or a video game and then have to return it by Monday and things like that. So, no, I very vividly remember those things. So, and I remember Dragon Age Origins, and I think Dragon Age 2 for that matter, were both games I had rented initially. I don't think I really thought much of them initially when I first played them, but I went back and played them again and fell more in love with the franchise. So we're going to start this in chronological order as I kind of just briefly summarize the games. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers, even though Origins and 2 are older games and have clearly been spoiled by the vast majority of people who have played it and whatnot. I'm still going to try because I still suggest that you play these games because despite their age, I personally believe they have aged very well. Combat, maybe not so much, and all that fun stuff, but I believe they're pretty good still. So Origins is the grand entrance, the everything you could expect. It was a dark fantasy, holy fuck dark. Very much there's a lot of strategy, a little more strategy based. I wouldn't say really based, but in the higher levels, but difficulties. Planning out and trying to maneuver your team was very crucial if you wanted to get through certain encounters. Unless you were someone like me who didn't really care about that and played the game on casual because you were just here for the story and the characters and not for the hardest fuck gameplay on nightmare difficulty. But basically, you are the newest Grey Ward, and you get to pick which your origins are. You get to pick if you're a human, an elf, or a dwarf. With humans, you have your choice of either being a noble man or woman, or being a mage from the Circle of Magi. Elves, you get a bit of a choice. You can be from the Circle of Magi, which is the only thing you get from mages, but you either get your choice of being one of Dalish, which is just a branch of wild elves who choose not to really assimilate into city life. Then you have the city elves, which are the ones that did. And then dwarves don't have magic at their disposal because of their exposure to a magical substance called lyrium. So for them, you either get to be a noble person or a basically cartel runner or person kind of thing. Get to work for the mafia. It's it's basically how it is. It's actually one of my favorite starts, if I'm being entirely honest. Um, then I just like the dwarves in general. But I really like the combat system. Magic was really fun in the game. You actually felt like magic did something, which was always really nice. Um, I know it also really helped to have a really well balanced party. I know personally for me, when it came to well balanced parties for my casual playthroughs with Origins, was always me as a warrior. I think I had Liliana with me as my rogue, and then I'd have Wynn, the healer, and Morrigan, the witch magic DPS. So, and I would definitely recommend the game because the characters are fun, the romances are interesting, I guess. They get a little more elaborate, obviously, a little bit later on in the games, but I mean, it's just pretty straightforward. Just get them to like you, and I think that's about it. And don't lose them along the way. I know Zevram, you can lose at certain points, or not even recruit him at all. Liliana, you can royally mess that one up. Morrigan, I don't know. I don't really romance Morrigan all that much. Alistair was always my go-to when I played when I was younger. Probably still is, because Alistair is just a smartass. But he's also charming in a stupid way. I wouldn't call him a himbo, but just one step above. He's not stupid, but he's not very smart either. He's average. Is that bad, Skull? Alright, moving on. So yeah, basically, Origins, you follow your life as a warden. You guys get screwed over by Logain, who is the king's uncle? I want to say uncle. It's been a minute since I played the game, but no, I'm pretty sure Logain is the king's uncle.
Okay.
Something like that. Basically gets the king killed, the entire order of Grey Wardens killed, where you and Alistair are the only two left alive in all of Ferelden, and you've got an entire blight on your hands to deal with, and you are the only person that can deal with the blight because you're a Grey Warden. And on top of that, Terran Logain has outlawed all the Grey Wardens, which means you're now a criminal.
Oh boy.
Yup. So you have to mosey your happy ass around the entire map, trying to get the support of the elves, the dwarves, the mages, and the Arl of Redcliffe, who basically raised the bastard son of the king, Alistair. So, basically leads all up to where you have to face off against Terran Logain, and then you have to face off against the Blight, which is basically the Archdemon. So, I think it's still a solid game. I like the characters, I like the quests, I like the little random encounters you can get every so often. I say my only complaint about the game is that it is long and quite tedious at times. A very good example of this would be in the dwarven city of Osmar. Or Samar? I don't know. I can't remember right now. It's been a minute. But that's probably the longest one that I really don't like. I know a lot of people don't like the Circle of Magi because it's tedious and long, and I don't disagree. It is long. I don't find it terribly tedious because it's one of the first places I always go. Because but no, with the dwarves, it's definitely long and tedious. And then going into the Landsmeet too to deal with Terran Logan was always boring and tedious. I usually end up taking a long break once I got to that part. But I still say it holds up. And the fact that I think I also like this about the game is the fact that the decisions you made had consequences. And I know there's a lot of games that obviously do feature this, and there's some that feature it, but it doesn't really hold up, unfortunately. Where it's supposed to be like this major choice, but it ends up not being a major choice. And you see that a lot more moving forward into the sequel games. Which I I'm gonna probably get some flack for this one, but Dragon Age 2 is my favorite of the 3 so far. Again, we have a fourth one supposedly in production, in development, so. But, Skull, to give you a little bit of history on this, Dragon Age 2 was a rushed game. It originally was supposed to be what Inquisition is, where you're supposed to travel around more of the free marches and not just Kirkwall. But because of time restraints and everything like that, the game was rushed and a lot of things had to be cut and simplified, essentially. So, to a lot of people, it was a downgrade from Origins, which is fair. I mean, the combat is definitely easier to a point. There are some times where even I manage to get fucked up, and I'm just like, what happened? It's also me probably just not paying any attention either.
Ooh.
Yeah. Um, they said they were really lazy with the romances since all the love interests are bisexual, which I don't have a problem with at all. Because if you really want to, you can nail all four of them in one playthrough.
Wait, what?
I kid you not. All the romance options in Dragon Age 2 are bisexual, and if you really wanted to play the field, you can fuck with all of them in one game, in one playthrough. There's a certain order you
Okay.
have to start with. Like, you always need to start with Isabella. That much I am aware. But you're able to basically sleep with all four of them and not lock yourself out of a romance so long as you follow a certain order to seduce them.
That's funny.
It is pretty funny. And I will say the biggest reason why I love Dragon Age 2 is not because of the gameplay or the setting or anything like that, which is I know what a lot of people are disappointed in, and especially since they were promised content that they didn't get in the end, which is fair. I wasn't into the franchise when 2 was being produced and then it eventually released. I came in afterwards. So I wasn't really part of all that, so I didn't really know what was going on. But what really sells the game to me was Hawk. Unlike Origins, where you could choose any race you wanted, you were pretty much locked into a human, and you had the choice between warrior, rogue, or mage. That's fine. But it's because the story follows Hawk as they leave the blighted lands of Ferelden during the first blight that the first game, not the first, the fifth blight that the first game takes place in to just survive. I think that's one of the biggest things I like about Hawk's story is that it is a story of survival. It is someone who is simply just trying their damnedest to protect the family that they love, who doesn't really love them or appreciate them. I think that's what also makes it as tragic. Like Hawk loves their family, but their family are a bit of assholes, especially the mother. Oh boy. Like you feel bad for your mother at first, but then you realize she's a gaslighting piece of shit, and you're just like, oh boy. But then I still cry when certain things happen in the game. And you got Bethany, your sister, who is basically, oh, I support you in everything, but if you make a certain choice, she's gonna be like, you did this to me, I hate you, you should have let me die. And I'm just like, I saved your life, bitch. Carver's the only one I actually like because he starts off an asshole, but then he still comes around. He comes around to you in the end. He's still an asshole to you in the end, but he also recognizes what you're doing and like why you do it. To a degree. Not completely, obviously, because younger brother and all that. Salty little bitch. But this game gave us a character you would have seen in Inquisition Skull. Let me ask you something. You ready for this? Skull. Alright, moving on. But Dragon Age 2 will always be a game that I do really love. It's something I'll always go back to and never get bored of. Unlike, obviously, Dragon Age Origins, which does get long and tedious at several points. But it's still a game I love. It just wouldn't play very often. And then you have Dragon Age 2, which, yes, isn't as grand as other stuff, but it's still a solid game in terms of at least like story and character, in my opinion, at least. I love the characters, primarily Fenris and Varric. Oh, Varric's amazing. Varric is just perfect. There's no reason they brought him back in Inquisition. Ah, dear lord. All right, fair enough. But I know a lot of fans don't like Dragon Age 2, but I will always love it, no matter what. It is the best Dragon Age game, in my opinion, especially when compared to Dragon Age Inquisition. So Origins is always going to be top tier, in my opinion. It was a very good game. It set the franchise for what it was supposed to be. Obviously, it didn't end up being completely like what Origins was in the end, but can't all be winners. Dragon Age 2 is a winner in my book, but of course it was a rushed game. It's far from perfect. There was big ideas and big hopes for it, but we sadly didn't get that. Although I personally like the smaller scope and scale of 2 and the story that is Hawke and their family. It is tragic, and I really feel for Hawke. They're really just a person trying to survive. Almost like the Warden, too, in Origins, now I think about it. The Warden was just trying to survive whatever situation they found themselves in. And the Grey Wardens was basically their chance of survival. Especially if you played the Dalish Elf. I suppose no, the noble dwarf too. Yeah, all of them actually, because then you also have the whole thing that happened with the Kuzlins, which fuck me, I will never get over that. Not so much of the Circle of Magi. Depends on how you play it, though. Anyway, so Inquisition, to me, is by far the worst of them. Now, I recognize that. How do I say this? Inquisition is everything that Dragon Age 2 would have been if it was given the time it needed to properly develop, and EA didn't really push, as far as I'm aware, on the Dragon Age team to get things done and give them such time restraints. But I don't think Inquisition is a good game. And so I'm gonna just get this out of the way. Combat and gameplay wise, it's actually phenomenal. I'll give it that. But the problem is, when I play video games, it's not necessarily those features I gravitate to first. Which people probably call me crazy and whatnot, but I don't care about the combat or certain gameplay features or this and that. What I ultimately care about is the characters and the story. My biggest issue with Inquisition is most and by far the story, followed right up next by the characters. In Origins and Dragon Age 2, I love the story and I love the characters. Dragon Age 2 especially had some really good characters that I absolutely adored. I can say the same for Origins as well, because you had Algarim, which I fucking love that drunk ass dwarf. And Alistair and Wynne. I liked Liliana for her song, But I didn't like her. I didn't say I wouldn't like her, but I didn't really. I was more neutral to her. Everyone else I was more neutral to, except for Sten. Sten was a pain in the ass to fucking deal with, and yet I rescued him every time from his fucking cage. I don't know why. I should have just left him. But and then two had two had Varric, the fucking man, myth, the legend, fucking Varric. Everyone falls in love with that bastard for good reason too. I didn't really care for Anders or Meryl, which kind of sucked. The mage option in the game kind of sucked ass, especially with what Anders did toward the end. English. Oh! I love Fenris. I love Isabella. Aveline, I adored. Uh, I liked Bethany at first, but then she just turned into a bitch and made me appreciate Carver all the more. But you had like a solid lineup of companions. And then obviously the stories are just I don't know what it is. I just like the fact that in Origins and even in 2, it's basically a story of survival and doing what you must to just survive. Like obviously as the Grey Warden you're going around to save everyone, not just yourself, but it's from a greater threat that would consume you too. So no matter what, out of either obligation, duty, or your own goodwill, whatever the case may be, you're still going out to survive, to find a way to survive the blight, which would destroy everyone. Whereas in Dragon Age 2, you're just trying to survive. You're trying to keep your family safe, and you're just everything. With Inquisition, I don't mind the story of the Inquisitor, someone who got lucky, I guess is a good way to put it. That they were the ones who were there to save the Divine at the Temple of Andraste. It's been a minute. I do apologize. But yeah, it feels like a very much of a luck thing that you were the one there to save the Divine. You got the the Mark of the Rifts, whatever the fuck they called it. I don't remember. It's been a minute. But there is that, unfortunately. And then there's the matter of the villain. So, I'm going to stress this as much as I can. Dragon Age Origins had a phenomenal villain in Terran Loghain, a man who was clearly starting to lose it a little bit for his fear of Orlesians, and it driving him to kill the king, as well as outlawing the Grey Wardens, the ones needed to stop the Blight, and while ignoring the Blight in general to focus on keeping Ferelden safe from other men, essentially. And then, of course, there's the Archdemon itself, which is more you fighting against the Darkspawn, which is an okay villain, obviously. Like, that's obviously just the main goal to get to at the end, is the Archdemon. Dragon Age 2 is definitely broken up into acts regarding the villain. Obviously, in the first act, it's just you trying to survive and get enough coin, which makes sense. That's fine. Nice little easy act. Then in the second act, you have the Canary, which. Then you also have the budding tensions between the mages and the Templars. Ooh, I wonder where that's gonna go. And then it comes up to Meredith at the end in Act 3, which Meredith is terrifying until she goes crazy. But even when she goes crazy, she's still a little terrifying. I do enjoy Meredith as an antagonist. She really comes off as that. Even though I feel like when you first meet her, she's kind of alright. Obviously, you still see the hatred of mages, but I don't know. I liked Meredith at first. I also love her voice actress. Same with Fenris. I love Fenris's voice actor. I almost said voice actress. But I did not like Inquisition's villain. For the main reason is his motivation. So obviously, Terran Loghain was fear and pride, a little bit. like fear of Orlais, but pride for his country and trying to keep it safe from people who would try to conquer them again if they just let them into their borders. That's understandable. The Archdemon is a force of nature, essentially doing as what the blight commands, while the blight that's infected it, essentially. And then you have Hawk and his struggle just against the world as he tries to just survive in Act 1. You know, the Qunari who just want their book back and are willing to go to whatever lengths that the Qun demands, because that's how it is for them. And then Meredith, you can understand her predicament throughout the entire game because you have been on the front lines with the problems between the mages and the Templars. So you've seen what blood magic can do with the Maleficarums. But it ultimately comes to you and your moral standing if you side with her that all mages should be purged or not, essentially. That magic is too dangerous. Especially after Anders. Fuck Anders. Dragon Age 2 kind of ruined Anders. He was a lot more fun in Awakening, but that's its own thing. Anders, you poor, poor bastard. They did you dirty. Unfortunately. But Corypheus is only I can't. Well, yeah, his motivation essentially is that he's trying to get into the Black City and seat himself on the throne of the Maker. He's trying to become a god, essentially. And I'm just like, uh-huh. So, that's all? It felt like a downgrade compared to other villains. It was a big downgrade, actually, because obviously you can't really say much about the Archdemon. Again, it is a force of nature, just doing what nature commands, at least for its corrupted state. Loghain, you can understand where he's coming from. There's a lot of complex reasons for what he did. Was he justified? No. Was he right? I wouldn't say so. But you can still understand where he's getting from. Like, you can understand the reasonings, even if you don't agree with them. And ignoring Hawk's personal struggle and the Qunari, you definitely see Meredith's point of view. Granted, what happens at the end is what happens, but up to that point, you definitely come to understand, and really it just comes down to your own moral compass and beliefs and whatnot if you fully side with her. Oh, Skull, you're back. Supposedly. Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay,
Hello.
there we go, finally. I came back just in time. I'm trying to get into the Inquisition talk, but I've been waiting for you. To the best of my
Okay,
abilities.
give me like 2 seconds. I'm gonna turn down the heat. It's stupid hot in here.
Ah.
It'll take 2 seconds.
I'm just trying to give you shit now. Who's messaging me? Can you let. I can do that. Yes. Alright. But yeah, no, Corypheus was a massive downgrade. Do I have you back, Skull? Oh, whoop. Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Alright. So, before I continue on with my self-indulged conversation with myself, I need to know how much of Inquisition have you played, and of what you played, how much do you remember?
Uh, very little and very little.
That sounds about right. All right, well, tell me what you do remember then.
Remember it basically just being a bunch of quests, combat fetch quests, stuff like that.
Okay. Well, just to give you some context, essentially what it is you are the Herald of Andraste with a mysterious mark on your hand that allows you to close the rifts that have appeared from the massive breach in the sky that is spewing out demons and spirits and ghouls and everything in between. Your job is essentially to close the rifts. Your main objective for the first half of the game, first third maybe, first third of the game. I don't know. It's one of the two. Your first objective is to close the breach. Well, once you close the breach, it becomes about stopping Corypheus, who is the one who I can't say actually opened the breach or made the breach, but he was a key component, a very key component. You were just the catalyst for what happened. Um, but yeah, you just kind of like go around and gather support for the Inquisition, grow in power, and try to topple Corypheus's influence in his army so that way you can destroy him, basically.
Okay.
And as I was kind of going over to myself, saying the fact that compared to the other two games, it is a step up in terms of technology, combat, and gameplay, with having a lot more features, a fleshed out crafting system compared to the other two games, which only had limited crafting, primarily to runes, potions, traps, bombs, that kind of stuff. The more combat used materials than anything else, which you still get with Inquisition, but you can now make your own armor and weapons. You have an entire fortress you can decorate. You can collect decorations for that fortress and all that fun stuff. You have the war table, which you can do as well. War table's okay. Uh, the only the biggest reasons why Inquisition is a big turnoff for me is the fact that the characters and the story are kind of meh, and I don't really click with them, which is the big turnoff for me because when I play games, I don't necessarily care about the combat gameplay and all that bullshit. I care more about
Hmm.
the story and the characters. I don't know how it is for you, Skull, but that's what it is for me.
Uh, if a game can keep my attention, I'll play through it.
So, which means it's got to have good characters and a good story, essentially.
Yeah. Or at least good, if not a good story, at least good gameplay.
Okay. So you're kind of like a mixed bag. It's more like it just needs to keep your attention long enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can say in terms of story, it's basic, but so have the other ones. But it misses something that Origins and 2 was just so much better. And I think a lot of it does lay with the antagonist because Corypheus, I hate it so much. Not because he necessarily does anything truly reprehensible or anything like that compared to other antagonists and things like that, but more he's just not fully developed or fleshed out or complex. His biggest reasoning for wanting to open a breach in the sky was because he wanted to get into the Black City, which holds the throne of God essentially, the throne of the Maker,
Oh my god.
and he wants to become a god.
Why does everybody in this universe want to be gods?
I don't know. But that's essentially his biggest reasoning for doing what he does is just power. And you can make that work, but there's got to be more to the character than just wanting power. And I get that he's a Tevinter Magister, one of the initial ones that actually breached the Golden City and turned it black. He was one of the first ones. But I feel like he could have been utilized a little bit more considering his background, his backstory.
Yeah.
But no, he just wants to get back into the Black City so he can achieve godhood. So, Yeah.
Oh
Especially
boy.
when you compare it to Terran Logain, who did what he did because he was afraid of Orlesians coming back in to assist with the Blight, only to turn on them and conquer Ferelden again, essentially. So he was afraid of the country he fought so hard to free being enslaved again. Not enslaved, but like conquered again. Which you can understand that. With like Meredith, like, ignoring the Canary and Hawk's own struggle for survival, Meredith had plenty of reason for wanting to exterminate the mages. Because the entire game, you see the struggle that mages have with blood magic and just the struggle within themselves to maintain and try and keep those ones, out or try to keep them reeled in or whatever the case may be. And you see the problem with the Templars where they're just as divided, where you have some who sympathize with the mages and you have others who are just like kill all mages. And it comes to a head when a certain event happens, and Meredith calls for the rite of annulment, which allows her to purge the tower of all its mages, killing all of them. And you
Oh
can
boy.
understand where she's coming from. And then when she eventually turns her blade on you, it makes sense because you are a powerful person. You, at that point, are the champion of Kirkwall. You are the most powerful person next to her. Probably more powerful than her. So it makes sense for what she does.
Oh boy.
It's like you can kind of see where I would have some issue with Corypheus, right?
Yeah.
And there is the, how do I say this? Uh Companion characters, your party members. I'm gonna just say this right now. For Inquisition, for the ones that I can remember off the top of my head, I still love Varric, but he feels like a watered down version of himself from Dragon Age 2, because in Dragon Age 2, he was a lot of fun. I loved him. I understand there is a lot more at stake here in this game, but I don't know. It feels like he's kind of watered down, and I understand he's been through hell and whatnot, but like, it's not the same. It's not my Varric. It's not the Varric I remember. Which makes sense again.
Jeez.
I know. Cassandra's okay. She's just got a massive stick up her ass. And she refuses to pull it out. Which I can respect her for what she is. I just don't care for her. I love Dorian. Dorian is just this fun, over the top man who's just like, hey, I'm here and I'm just gonna dazzle everyone. I think one of his nicknames in game is literally Sparkler. Because of his magic, I think. But it's cute. I like it. I love Iron Bull. Iron Bull's hilarious. And I love his obsession with dragons. Let me think here. I don't like what they did with Liliana. I know she's not a party member, but she's still a member of the Inquisition that you interact with. I don't care for her. Josie's okay. Cullen is. He's a good looking man, but that's all you get from me. I don't really think much else beyond him. And yes, I have romance Colin and Inquisition and built up that friendship and whatever the case may be. I still feel indifferent towards the man.
Oh boy.
I found him a lot more interesting in Dragon Age Origins, to be quite honest, but that's just me. Only because if you play as a female mage skull and if you approach him, he has this massive crush on you, and then he like runs away if you like get really suggestive with him. It's kind of funny.
Wow.
It's just like,
That
oh,
kind of
I gotta go.
that kind of makes me think of interacting with Dusa in Hades.
Mhm.
It's kind of like you go over and talk to her at all and give her a gift or anything, and it's just immediately like, oh, thank you, bye, disappears into ceiling.
Get the fuck out of here. Essentially, yeah. Let me think who else. Solus. is okay. Obviously, I know the big twist with him, but he's okay. I don't care for him one way or another. He's just there, unfortunately. Cole is Cole. I never really had much of an attachment to him, mainly because I never used him. Sarah is fucking annoying. I don't like her. She's funny at times, but otherwise she gets on my fucking nerves. Um, Blackwell is actually one of my favorite. I have to say. You might appreciate this one because this is what made me think of Skull. And minor spoiler for Blackwell's story, I do apologize for this one at least. But there comes a point where a man is being executed in or like Val Royale. And as you're watching it, Blackwell comes up and he's just like, no, 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 you got the wrong guy. The guy you say is this one is actually me. And that's when you find out that he took up someone else's name because
Damn.
he was going to join the Grey Wardens under the first Blackwall, but that Blackwall died, and he didn't want that Blackwall's like memory and name to like disappear. I guess is a good way to say. So he became the new Blackwall. He's not actually a Grey Warden at all. He's just pretending, essentially, because he wants to be someone different. He wants to be someone else. Because the person who he was a criminal. So, you know. But the whole scene reminded me of Les Mis with Jean Valjean. In the courtroom, whenever he barges in and he reveals himself as the real Jean Valjean, despite it being his chance for peace and freedom, essentially. Like, you know what I mean, right, Skull? You've seen Les Mis, right?
Nope.
What?
It's on my list to watch, but I haven't seen it.
Oh! I'm so. Oh my gosh, I would have figured that would have been one of the ones you would have seen.
Nope, it's on the list to watch
Oh
though.
my gosh. I'm a little upset about that. I'm more surprised and shocked and everything. Holy fuck. Alright, well, as someone who's seen the live musical in Chicago and the um musical movie version with Hugh Jackman,
Are we are we talking about the original or the remake? Because the remake is a piece of garbage.
uh, which remake?
The newest one.
The one with Hugh Jackman in it and everyone?
You don't just let your musicians sing to their own timing. That completely throws off all choreography and literally everything else.
Okay. Well, no, I've seen both that more recent movie and I've seen the stage production in Chicago. So take that for what you will. But there is literally a scene where a man is being tried because they think that he is Jean Valjean, where it's not actually him, it's, you know, someone else entirely. It's the guy who's, I think, the mayor? I don't really remember. But he has a moment where he's just like, this is my chance, but can I live with myself if I let someone else die in my place as someone who's supposed to be me? And he comes to that conclusion that, like, no, I can't. So then he goes into the trial where the proceedings are taking place, and he loudly announces that he is Jean Valjean. I think I want to say it was the stage production that did this, where he didn't say it was he was Jean Valjean. He used his numbers 24601, I believe. Something like I don't remember the exact numbers, but he used those to show who he was. And I like that a lot better because I think in the most recent one, obviously with Hugh Jackman and all that, um, they just kind of yell out, "I'm Jean Valjean," which I'm like, oh, come on, you could have just used the numbers. The numbers are cool, and it really cements that that is indeed who he is. Because who else would know that? But yeah, no, that's what that reminded me of, and I really liked it. and I have a lot more respect for Blackwell's character and everything because it makes him a little more dynamic. Is a good way to say. I don't think there's many other ones I can really talk about. That's about it. Like, for the most part, the cast is fine, but compared to the previous party members, it's a bit of a letdown. I'm gonna say that right now. It really is. So, Inquisition personally is not my favorite, just because the story and the characters don't quite match up to Origins or 2. Which I know it's funny to use 2 as like a better comparison since everyone, not everyone, but a good majority of the fandom does not like Dragon Age 2. But that's just how it is.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Skull, I know you were gone for a large part of my self-indulged speech to myself. Did you have any questions about any of the games?
Not really as it came up. Had I actually been here to listen, I probably would have had questions.
That's definitely fair. That's why you make sure you do things before we start recording, but
I got distracted
When
by Origami
don't
Front.
you? Fuck's sake! When don't you?
You should expect this from me by now. I don't know why you're so upset.
Because I expect a little bit better from you. Not much, mind you, but at least a little bit. Alright, well. Can you say if you play any of the games? Aside from Inquisition that
I
you tried?
I mean, I definitely want to play more. They seem like interesting games.
Okay. Well, then I can shed this little bit on what I can. Dragon Age Origins is obviously aged since it came out, I think, around the same time as Elder Scrolls Oblivion. If that tells you anything about how old it is. I think it's like 2006,
Slow,
2007, or
confused
8.
blink.
What?
Slow, confused blink.
Alright, fine. Well, moving on from that. It is a good game. It definitely sets the franchise for what it's supposed to be in regards of tone and everything else. You have fleshed out characters that are honestly fairly engaging. I think you would love Zevram for many reasons. And I just think you'll just love his whole
Uh-oh.
character. Okay, imagine this. An elven assassin sent to kill you, but when he fails to kill you, you have a chance to recruit the saucy, seductive whore.
Oh shit.
There you go. Tell me I'm wrong.
Uh, fuck you.
I'm right. Haha, bitch. um, yeah. Yeah, you'll like that one. It is a long game. I do warn you of that, just because of everything you have to do in the game, and there are parts that are long, that feel longer than others, and probably are longer than others. But it's not a bad game. I definitely recommend it. You just kind of have to get past the aged graphics. I don't even call them aged. I think they're still good in my opinion. More like the aged controls, gameplay maybe. I still think it's good. I still play it from time to time. Obviously not as often, just because I know what's coming and I dread what's coming, so then I stop playing. But I think you'd enjoy it. Dragon Age 2 is definitely the black sheep of the franchise so far because it was a rushed game. They had to cut a lot of content that would have been in the game because it was supposed to be what Inquisition was. But it ended up being a much smaller game in comparison, and you can get the rushed feeling from the oversimplified combat, story, and everything else like that. But in my opinion, it is the simple nature that makes it such a good game. And not to mention, the protagonist, Hawk, is one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. Especially if you go with the snarky, sarcastic Hawk Skull. Oh my gosh.
Oh boy.
It's quite fun seeing how a lot of fan artists who do enjoy at least the characters of the game all seem to unanimously agree that sarcastic, funny, witty Hawk is canon Hawk. And that's what I love, because I agree with it. Sarcastic Hawk is best Hawk.
Hmm.
And not to mention, like I said, all the characters are bisexual, so you have your pick. You got 2 male lovers and you got 2 female lovers. If I had to take a guess at which one you would like, I would say Fenris. My favorite. The brooding elf that is a runaway slave with a bad temper issue, but has a heart that learns to melt for you as you grow to love them. Not to mention his voice actor has a sexy voice.
Oh boy.
Yes, and to add on top of the edge of brooding, he's covered with spiky armor.
Oh boy.
Not to mention, every time he steps on screen, you hear a very soft, beautiful melody that plays that is his theme song. So,
Oh boy.
yes, it's not the saucy,
Oh,
seductive whore man that is Zevram, but it is a brooding edgelord.
oh my god, shut up. Fuck up.
Oh my gosh. I think I know you too well here, Skull, don't I?
Shush.
I definitely enjoyed Dragon Age 2. Hawk is amazing, the characters are amazing, the story's pretty good. Again, it is simplified in terms of gameplay and combat, but I think that works for the simple story for itself. And I do recommend it for those who are interested but are a little warded off because of all the negativity that the second one gets. Inquisition, I say, is a good game to play if you don't care too much about the characters or the story. If you're just playing for the gameplay itself, it's fine. Actually, it's better than the first 2 games in terms of gameplay and technology. But if you're looking for characters and a story, it's mediocre at best. Well, story is very mediocre, but characters are hit or miss. And for this one, Skull, da, 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 I say Dorian. Either Dorian or Iron Bull you would love.
Okay.
Dorian being that very flashy, flamboyant, and fun kind of personality. And you have Iron Bull, who's just like, okay, I don't give a shit. Literally, like, oh my gosh. You want to hear a funny scene?
Oh boy.
So if you romance Iron Bull and you want to make it like fully official, you have to get a dragon tooth and cut it in half and give the other half to your significant other to show that you want to be with them for like permanently. Not really permanently, but like essentially going steady. And before you give him the present, you basically fuck. And in the following scene after that, he's laid straight out on the bed, bare ass fucking naked, while you're dressed at this point. And then your chain of commands start coming in, starting with Cullen, who walks in, immediately shields his eyes. And he's like, oh god. And I think after that is Josie, who's just like, oh, hello. And then Cassandra walks in afterwards saying, oh, dear maker. To which Iron Bull is just like, for fuck's sake, who's next? Um, oh my gosh, Skull. You would love it. And I think you would really feel for Dorian's story a lot. And all right, there we go. I'm back here. You would feel for Dorian's story just for what it is, and minor spoiler. Ready for this?
Boy.
So Dorian is indeed a gay man, But you don't discover this until you go to meet with his father, one of the magisters of Deventer. It's there you learn that the reason why Dorian ran away and kind of hates his father is because his father tried to use blood magic to make his son straight.
Oh
More or
boy.
less. To kind of like persuade him to marry this woman to further the family's ends.
Damn.
Yeah. There's also a trans character in the game too.
What?
Yes. I think it's Krem. I think their name is Krem. But they are very similar to you, Skull, in terms of transgender.
Oh boy.
Yes. Figure at least to put that in there, because it wasn't something I understood when I initially played the game, but obviously now older, looking back at the character, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, so Dragon Age is a solid enough franchise. However, we will see with the fourth game because it's EA, and I don't have a lot of hope for EA games anymore. Just look at The Sims and that
Oh
entire
boy.
nightmare it's become. And I'm really hoping that they'll at least just make this a good game. That's all I ask. I want an amazing game. I don't want. Obviously, I know the community doesn't want some slapped together piece of shit that was to a lot of people Dragon Age 2. I disagree with it being a piece of shit, but that's just me. Um, but I do want something in the vein of Inquisition where it's got the good gameplay, crafting system, and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, fine tuned for the newer generation, but I want what Origin and 2 had, and that was good characters and story. I'm holding out hope, but I'm waiting to be disappointed.
Let's be honest, Lotus, you're asking for too much of a game developer. Gameplay and story?
Hey,
Never.
look, they were able to do it in the early to late 2000s. I don't know what fucking changed, but something changed. They would even,
Quantity over quality.
I guess, cuz like
And also graphics. People would prefer having good graphics over good gameplay. For
sucks
some
ass,
stupid fucking reason.
cuz it's got to look nice. That's why.
It doesn't have to look nice.
Yeah, well, to a lot of people it does. So,
It
that's the
doesn't
sad
have to.
well, that's the sad truth of it, unfortunately.
Whoever's that picky and has that high standards used to fucking get off their high horse.
Get off your high horse. Yep, I feel that. But that's all I have to say on Dragon Age today. Any questions, comments, concerns, Skull?
No.
Alright. In that case, we will sign off on this. It's been a fun episode just talking about Dragon Age. This has been Lotus and Skull, and you guys have a good morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever the case may be, and we will see you all later.